Okay, good morning, North Penn. We're here not live in the North Penn television studios, so we're bringing this video to you this morning via YouTube. We hope everybody's having a wonderful morning. I'm here with Dr. Bauer and Steve Scrocky. We're going to talk about the high school renovations and our plans and what has been going on so far this year as we progress. We're hoping that you're very informed because you've been watching everything we've been producing. But just in case, we want to take a little bit of time this morning to talk about our high school renovation, where we are, where we're going, and then try to also gather some feedback from you as we wrap this up. So, Dr. Bauer,
yes,
good morning.
Sir. Good morning, Bob. How are you
doing?
I'm great.
Excellent. It's a glorious week. We're looking forward to an awesome day of professional development for everybody. But to start the morning off, we just wanted to give an overview of where we're at, and if we can back up to the presentations we've done to the board. Where have we been since January?
Yeah, so right around the new year, we started publicly presenting all the information that has been involved in the studies for the project. We did an enrollment study, a traffic study, one work session we presented like the rationale of why ninth grade would be on your high school campus, like all the other high schools in the county. We had a couple community forums. We utilized work sessions and had special meetings to get public input and have discussions and dialogue. We've done tours here and other facilities. We've gone on visits to other high schools, or kind of on the East Coast. We've been as far down as Virginia to go look at kind of state-of-the-art new modern high schools. So it's been pretty comprehensive so far, and we are on the cusp of a design contract, which essentially would authorize the architect to start designing what this high school could look like.
And let's talk about the community feedback we've had. So we've had these forums, we've had the school board meeting presentations. We did a tour of Upper Marion High School, area high school, where 30 or so folks got to go with us. We couldn't take everybody in the community. Taking 90,000 people on a tour of a high school is not an easy thing to do. But talk to me about some of the feedback you've gotten from community members, whether it's your community conversations, the meetings with students in the buildings, all of our community engagement outside of our presentations that you've had.
Yeah, so thanks for hitting on that, because I didn't mention I've been doing monthly 2 meetings, a community conversation and caffeinated conversation. Some are virtual, some are in person. So we have all those meetings, and then we also circulate around the district and talk with kids. So the feedback, honestly, Bob, has been super positive. People are excited about the concept of moving forward with this renovation. I think a lot of folks are thinking, yeah, it's about time. And those who know the building very well agree that it's time. But a closer look at the systems and what's going on behind the scenes in this building, there seems to be a lot of support. Now, I recognize the audience when we have these conversations are people who are very engaged, they're parents, and they want what's best for the high school. But there's also a subset of our population here who hasn't been engaged and isn't informed on what's happening. And that's really our job over the next few months.
So when we talk about, the input we've had on design and those types of things, and I'll bring in Steve on this here, before we talk about the status of the high school and the actual options. I know I've heard a lot of feedback. People are giving very particular feedback about, like, well, you should put this here. Where are we at when we talk about our schematics, our design, our overview? So, the things you've seen on the maps and on the slides, it kind of shows shaded out areas. What's that mean, and where are we actually at? And when we see those shaded areas, I think people are looking at that as the design. Explain where we're at and the differences between them.
Yeah, so technically, Bob, and good morning, by the way. Thanks for having me this morning. Technically, we really don't have a design yet. That's really going to be the next phase. The next phase is what's called schematic design. So we're hopeful to have a contract with the Schrader Group in the very near future that will allow his group, along with the engineers and so forth, to do an actual design of the building. Along with that then comes engineered estimates. Right now we have high-level estimates for both of the options that are based on the square footage of the building, but we're looking to get more system-type estimates, which we just don't have now. So even though we've been talking about a high school project for 7 years, we are now really entering the phase of doing a true design of the building.
Let's talk about our building real quick. Any high-level overview, or should we just go right to the video on what's needed here at the high school?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Folks who have been in this building in the last, 10, 15, 20 years recognize that it is dated, right? The floors, the colors, the systems, the windows, the facade. But those who really know the building well know that the systems, more than anything, are in dire need of repair and updating. And our facilities crew does an amazing job keeping the building living and breathing each day. But there's a point, and we are well beyond that point. So I think the video will do a good job of kind of showing folks where we are.
That's great. So we have Pete Nicholson, Dr. Deanna Waters, who took a quick tour. We'll take a couple minutes here to show you behind the walls and behind in the boiler rooms and those types of places to give you a sense of what some of that looks like if you haven't been in there.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. I appreciate it. Behind us, what you'll see is the 1999 edition of K-Pod. And although it's only 24 years old, it does show some wear and tear.
Ooh, Pete, would you look at that?
Yeah, when you look at the exterior, there are definitely some cracks. Some of the expansion joints need to be replaced. The brick needs to be repointed. And even though K-Pod has windows that can open, most of the exterior windows in the building do not open and offer very little natural light into the classrooms. Over the next, 2-3 minutes, we're going to be taking a tour of the building, kind of showing you the ins and outs of what is needed at North Penn High School. So as we leave the 24-year-old new section of the building and enter the original 1971 section of the building, accessibility is really an issue here in the old portion of the building.
Oh, I know. I was just here the other day for Frozen. Amazing, by the way. And even though it seats, I think, 1,717 people, unfortunately, there's not one seat for wheelchairs.
Yeah, you know, even though we had 13,000 people come to see Frozen over the last 2 weekends, there's not one spot for a wheelchair. The folks that are in wheelchairs have to unfortunately sit behind the front section of our seating, and if they have companions with them, we have to set up folding chairs for them because we have no other space.
Yeah, we have to do something about that.
Absolutely. So here in this big building, there are only 2 elevators, one right here behind us in E-Pod, the other one's all the way in the front of the building at K-Pod.
Yeah, and that is so far, especially depending on like what shoes you're wearing. But you know, the unfortunate thing is, I think this entire year, there's only been 1 elevator working.
Yeah, a good portion of this year, this elevator has been down, it wasn't working. So unfortunately, if a student was in the back of the building, had a class, and needed to go upstairs, they needed to traverse from the back of the building all the way to the front, go up the elevator, and go back to the back of the building. Lost a lot of instructional time for students that weren't able to access this elevator.
I bet.
So when we get behind the hallways here, you can see these old control rooms from 1960s and the old pneumatics and the leaks that happened. Our facilities crew has been phenomenal at keeping everything running and keeping us in school. But you can notice how all of this is just way outdated. There are buckets that are hanging from the pipes to keep leaks from happening. And it's just really in need of some repair.
Would you look at that? Woo.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. So Dana, look at these old valves. Some of these valves are so old and so stuck that if we need to make a fix to a small part of the building, larger valves have to be turned off and turn off water to the entire section of the building to make a tiny little repair that could otherwise take just a few minutes, may take an entire day.
What'd you say?
Deanna, the old part of the building uses radiant heating and cooling. There are copper pipes above the ceiling that hot water runs through to heat the room and cold water runs through to cool the room. And you'll see sometimes there's rust on the ceilings because of that.
Yeah, would you look at that?
Yeah, you can see right there where there's stains on the ceiling tiles. I've actually heard and seen when it's really humid in the room, it actually rains because the water condenses and actually drips down into the classroom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on top of that, it's really inefficient. So if we have a really warm day followed by a really cool day, the system just can't catch up. And you know, it stays very warm in here for a long time and then stays very cool in here for a long time if we have those fluctuations in temperature.
Oh, you don't even know what humidity does to my hair, just the thought of that. Wow.
I don't know what it does to your hair now.
Yeah, it's not good.
So as you can see with the space behind us, most of the collaborative spaces that were originally planned for North Penn High School have been taken up by the need for additional storage or for additional office space. You can see it's very closed off, it's very locked up. Looking down the hallways here, you know, it's very difficult to see down a hallway and to see what kids are doing.
Yeah, definitely. Like if I was teaching, like you can't even tell what's going on unless you're staring directly down each hallway.
Yeah, there's a long hallway. I can see 2 students at the very end of the hallway, and that's all you can see.
And who knows what they could be doing.
So here we are as we kind of wrap things up. We're headed back into K-Pod from F-Pod over the bridge here.
Oh, would you look at that?
Yeah, unfortunately a lot of K-Pod is actually pretty leaky. On rainy days the water comes through and has caused a lot of the tiles to pop. And we deal with some water issues in K-Pod often. So even though it's only 24 years old, It is in pretty rough condition. A lot of the HVAC pieces are near end of life, and this really needs a facelift and a significant renovation as well.
Wow, well, thanks for giving me a tour this morning, Pete. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a brief overview. There's obviously a whole lot more you can learn by going to our website and checking out the Reimagined website from there. There's past presentations. There's all kinds of information, pictures, videos. I think you'll find it really beneficial to learn all about the project.
All right, good. Thank you.
Absolutely. With that, we send it back to the desk, and thank you, Dr. Bauer.
We got a chance to take a look at that.
We did. We took a look at that.
Behind the walls there. And I think many times we talked about our facilities crew really doing an amazing job. And I know there's a little level of like, wow, we really make things look really good. And we make things work. But we're really past the always making things work. And we're a critical failure away from having some problems or affecting classes about whether or not we can have class. So those crusty valves that if you close it once, it may not open or it may not close. One of those things.
Sure.
Take that, how many square feet do we have in the building?
Something like 550,000.
So that's 550,000 square feet of 1971, when it was new, gear in our building. So there's a lot to do there. So let's talk about our options. Basically, we've been talking about two options.
Yes.
There is a third. What's the third?
The third, which I am saying is not an option.
Correct.
So we're not calling it option 3, and that would be to not move forward with the project.
Do nothing.
Do nothing.
Zero renovations, no changing of anything. It's not an option.
Not an option. You certainly have to protect your assets, right, as an organization. And this building is the largest asset in the school district, and it is time. Probably was time 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So that's not an option. There's option 1 and option 2.
Let's talk about option 1.
Option 1 is takes into consideration moving 9th grade to the high school campus. So an addition that is large enough to have an additional 1,000 students here. Both options, by the way, involve moving transportation off the campus. But option 1 would move the 9th graders to the North Penn High School campus to have 9 through 12, which is high school, all on the same campus. And then certainly renovating and reimagining all of the spaces that currently exist.
And physically, when we talk about adding the 9th grade wing to the building, adding capacity for 1,000 more kids to come here, the next question is, okay, so we build that 9th grade comes here. How many years out? And it seems like it's forever, but how many years out are we? And why is it that many years out till 9th grade would come here to the high school?
Yeah, great question, Bob. So if you're going to add 9th grade, you would add the addition, the permanent structure first, because you would utilize that permanent structure as your swing space while you're renovating. So we would build the new addition and then say close APOD. Take the teachers and kids out of APOD, put them in the new structure while you're renovating APOD, and then swap them back, move to another area of the building. So that swing space would start first. If we didn't add 9th grade, then that swing space would have to be temporary modular construction, which we are told is estimated to be about $15 million just for the modulars, because you would need such a large network of modular construction and all the plumbing and all the stairwells and all the things that come with it, that the cost is pretty excessive just for modulars.
Sure.
So that's where we are. That's what that would have to look like.
Okay, option 2.
Option 2. Option 2 is essentially a refurbishing of the current structure. New systems, new floors, new windows, new air conditioning, new heating. Notice I said air conditioning, Bob. And kind of just a refurbished, but the structure itself would look exactly as is. So no addition other than for purposes of ADA compliance, just kind of giving a facelift to the actual building itself.
And at a level, bringing it up to current code.
Yes.
But we're taking 1971 design space to a current code of 2025, 2030 code space.
Yes.
No changes basically anywhere else. We're taking 1971 and making it function again.
That's correct.
Okay. So the big part of that is option 1, option 2. Steve, you talked to about the differential in the costs of option 1, bringing 9th grade here, reimagining the space a bit, and then option 2 of let's make 1971 work again.
Yeah, so option 1 with the reimagined space and bringing the 9th graders to the high school, that has a price tag estimated to be $400 million. And option 2, basically a basic renovation of the building, keeping the grade structure the same as it is now, that is $240 million.
So the next step in this, so that's there's a little bit of a difference there in those spaces, And what we're going to talk about next are, with ninth grade, the board is discussing going to referendum to approve the debt needed to to build the ninth grade center.
Sure.
And make the $400 million 9 through 12 building work. Steve, you just talk to me about, if someone doesn't know what a referendum is, what are we talking about?
Sure. At a high level, a referendum is basically an opportunity for the voters in North Penn School District to cast a vote either yes or no for borrowing the money necessary for option 1. We are not looking at a referendum for option 2. So the way it would work is there would be a ballot question. It's to be determined whether that'll be at a general election or a special election or a primary election. We haven't made that determination yet, but there'll be a question, a pretty specific question, where voters in North Penn School District, they will have a tremendous say. In fact, they will have the entire say with option 1 if that actually moves forward.
And it's fair to say the referendum will be approving the debt needed, the money needed to tax above Act 1 index. So if we can just talk about that a little bit. So we have Act 1 index each year, which fluctuates based upon CPI and other things, and it comes up with the state Act 1 index, and that's the limit we're allowed to tax to each year. That's the limit every year. So the referendum does what? Here's the Act 1 index. What happens with the referendum if it's approved?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Bob. So Act 1 was passed in 2006, and you're right, it is pretty much an inflationary index. So for example, in our upcoming budget year, the index is 4.1%, which means that the tax increase cannot be more than 4.1%. However, any debt that's incurred via a referendum vote, you would then be allowed to exceed that Act 1 index.
So it would be Act 1, or whatever that tax increase might be. It could be 0. I'm going to be fair and say it's probably not going to be 0, but whatever that Act 1 plus the referendum debt cost.
That's correct.
So generally, what are we talking about for, most of our staff here live in the community. What are we talking about of what that tax increase could look like if we pass the referendum, we bring ninth grade to the building, we're doing a $400 million renovation with ninth grade here. What's that affect our average homeowner in the community?
Yeah, so I think it's important to note first off that when we look at option 1 with the $400 million price tag, we are not looking to do a referendum for the entire amount.
Let me ask that. So that's been a question. Yeah. So why are we saying $90-some million? That's the only referendum piece. Why do we say just that? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, sure, happy to. So like you said, when you go to referendum, that money, that debt, that borrowing is outside of Act 1. So if we said, all right, let's go to referendum for the entire project, then, and it passes, let's say, that's $400 million outside of the taxes. So you could raise taxes for the 400 and Act 1. No one is saying we should do that. That would be an unnecessary burden or potential for a burden onto the taxpayer. So rather, we don't need to go to referendum to do option 2. We do for the addition of the ninth grade. So that's why option 2 would just be typical school district, school board deciding how much the tax increase will be year to year. Mm-hmm. Whereas with option 1 and the referendum, the taxpayer is making that decision for that additional, say, $94 million.
And I know I asked the question of the impact of taxpayer, we'll get that, but for all intents and purposes, while the referendum says for $90 million, we don't know the number yet, so whatever it is for the ninth grade component of it, if that referendum fails, we are defaulting to option 2. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
That is the recommendation of the administration, yes.
So from a community standpoint, they are deciding really 2 big things. A, to take on the debt. That's the question. Mm-hmm. Really, the question is, do we bring ninth grade here and reimagine North Penn High School? That's the question. While not written that way, because it's going to be about incurring the debt for a ninth grade center, the question really says, the community will decide, is ninth grade coming here, and are we doing the Reimagine North Penn High School 9 through 12. Is that accurate?
That is certainly accurate. You must have sat through quite a few meetings.
Been to a couple meetings,
yeah.
A few of those. So let's talk about the taxpayer impact just for a moment, just so people get a sense of, okay, we're above Act 1 index. What's that mean for the average homeowner here in North Penn?
Yeah, so first let's talk about what is an average homeowner here in North Penn School District. So the median assessed value here at North Penn School District is about $150,000. Now, a lot of people say right away, well, $150,000, my home is worth a lot more than $150,000. How can that be the average? So the assessed value is the number that's used for taxation purposes. That does not translate into the fair market value of your home. However, there is a number that's put out each year by the state. It's called a common level ratio. It's a way you can do a mathematical calculation to kind of get close to what the fair market value is. Here in Montgomery County, it varies county by county first off. Here in Montgomery County, it's about 0.42. So if you take that $150,000 assessed value and divide it by 0.42, that should yield approximately what your fair market value is. So here in North Penn, it's roughly about $380,000 in terms of fair market value. That's what the 150 in assessed value translates into. So now,
and I think that's the clear part, because I still people here are like, 150, who has a house for that? You know, most homes in here are 400,000, 350,000. That is and I think the last assessment that the county did was sometime in the mid to late 90s, the last time we assessed all the properties. So that's the assessment. I know my home is assessed at around $160,000. That's what my home is assessed at. So my house is not worth 160. It is assessed. That's what I get taxed on by my township and by the county and by the school district.
Exactly. The last countywide reassessment here in Montgomery County, you're right, is in 1998. So the farther you get away from that reassessment, that has a big difference between the assessed value and the implied market value. So when you say that a lot of homes around here sell 350, 400,000, that's right in that median value in terms of actual value of the home.
So what are we talking tax increase then for the additional $90-some million that the referendum would incur?
Yeah, so one of the things we looked at, Bob, with our financial advisor, we looked at a series of borrowings and paying off those bonds. Bonds are typically the way that you incur the debt to pay for a building project in a school district. But we're looking to pay off that debt over a 32-year period with a series of bond issues. So with option one at $400 million, the average homeowner in North Penn School District over that period of time, now not 1 year, let me make this very clear, that's not in 1 year, but the total increase would be about $7,165, $7,165.
Over 32 years.
Over 32 years in option one. And in option two, it's about $2,015. So one of the things we're looking at to keep things in perspective, we said there's no option three, right? So there's not a third option where it's a zero cost. So option one, we're saying $7,165 over 32 years. Option two, we're saying $2,015. So we're saying, so what's the difference? What is the additional cost, option one over option two? And that comes out to $5,150. So for the average homeowner, that would be an annual increase for the debt, for the new debt for the high school of $161. And that's for the entire amount, not just the referendum piece, but for the entire amount.
Got it. So we talked the funds. We want to use our time here. Let's talk about what's that get us, the 9 through 12. You know, what are we looking at when we're reimagining this space? And I know a lot of folks here, state of the art or 21st century, and I want to remind everybody that 21st century is
23
right now.
years ago.
It's right now, yeah. We're in
Sure,
it. We're a quarter of the way through the 21st century, so we're not talking about the future. We're talking about right now. So we're building spaces for now. So, you know, what does a reimagined space look like here at North Penn High School?
Yeah, so the design of high schools back in, say, the 60s and 70s, it is a bit tongue-in-cheek, but people use the phrase bells and cells, right? It feels very institutional, room to room to room, in blocks, very much like what we have here at North Penn High School in A-Pod, B-Pod, C-Pod, and E-Pod, for example. A reimagined space is a bit more flexible, right? So there is instruction that goes on in the classroom, but then that classroom spills out into the hallway. There are large collaboration spaces. Kids aren't just within those four walls. There's a lot of transparency. You can see. Whereas right now we have classrooms around the perimeter and then kind of like a planning center and small group instruction inside of a pod, but you can't see around all these corners. A 21st century high school and learning space in general is much more wide open, more opportunity to be flexible and change where you're learning and how you're learning. And it definitely, the learning goes well beyond the four walls of the classroom.
And let's talk about ninth grade, of why it's important. I think most people who grew up here, work here, have been in the community, 10 through 12 is normal.
Yeah.
That's a normal high school, right? Of course, 10 through 12 were good. Why is it important to have ninth grade here at the high school?
Yeah, so there's a reason why high school transcripts are 9 through 12, right? And the opportunities that we offer here at North Penn High School are, some would say, limitless, from clubs and activities and sports, and then into the classroom and the curriculum. And our ninth graders don't have the same access to those things that high school students around the country do when they have ninth grade in their high school. Yes, we have 130 kids come up here every day to take classes. But how many kids would take advantage of opportunities that occur here at the high school that don't, because they don't want to get on a bus, right? And to spread out those resources across 3 middle schools is it doesn't make sense. When you have them all kind of in the same place, it allows you to be more efficient with those resources and provide those opportunities for the ninth graders. So, and you can even throw in there, Bob, like school spirit and connectedness and ninth graders being mentored by the older students and so forth. So there's many, many reasons why programmatically and course opportunities and activities, why every other high school in the county and Montgomery County and Bucks County soon, there's one other district who does not, but they are moving in 2025. They're going to have ninth graders in their high school. We would be the only school district in Bucks or Montgomery County without ninth graders at our high school, and there's good reason for that.
So the next question is going to be, particularly I think for our middle school staff. So when we talk about the middle school, we have needs there. And what does that mean for K through 8? Mm-hmm. What's that mean for the rest of the grades and middle schools? And the big question always that will come up is
air conditioning.
Air conditioning. So where does that fall into it, and how does what we're doing here at the high school inform the rest of that?
Right. So we are trying to be very intentional about, we can't make all these decisions at one time. Yes, we understand those decisions are necessary and there will come a time, but the first decision, the building that needs the most attention, is North Penn High School. It has not been, other than the addition of K-Pod, it has not been renovated or touched since the 70s. It is the only building in the district that is like that. So in terms of timeline, you asked this question earlier and I never really hit on it. We did the addition, right? If we go with option 1, you add on the addition. All said and done, no construction. We're actually saying that this year's first or second graders would be the first ones to come here for ninth grade with no construction. Okay, so that's in terms of timeline. It doesn't mean that this project has to be the only thing happening in the district till 2029, say 6 or 7 years from now. But this is the decision we're making. If ninth grade moves to the high school, is there an opportunity or potential to maybe only have 2 middle schools? Yes. That is an option, but that decision is not being made right now. So the hope is that prior to the end of this project, we are engaging in design and development and all those things that come with renovation of our middle schools. But we don't know what we're doing at the middle school until we make a decision on the high school.
Which then also flips back, there's been discussion about 6th grade.
Yes.
Would 6th grade go to middle school or not?
And all the modular construction that exists at Pembroke and Penfield, all the modular construction that exists in our elementary schools. Is 6th grade going to stay in the elementary? We don't know that yet. But if we want to have the flexibility to make some of those moves, ninth grade needs to come to our high school campus.
Sure.
The most typical grade structure is K to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12. North Penn, we're a little bit different. We're K to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12. So this is the first shoe to drop. All those decisions are very, very important. Of course, I wish we had put air conditioning in our middle schools when those schools were renovated 20, 25 years ago.
Sure.
The district did not decide to do that. So we need to prioritize right now North Penn High School's the building that needs the work the most, and then the middle schools are next up.
And I know that's like one of the major frequently asked questions that we have.
Sure.
Another one I think that affects staff is, I've heard this too, like, oh, what happens to staffing? Mm-hmm. Are we reducing staffing? Do these moves reduce our staff, or does it affect any of our staff in any way other than potentially moving to a new building? What's the effect on staffing?
Yeah, so what I can say is I certainly can't predict the future in terms of the economy and all these things that could happen. However, the motivation here is not to reduce staff, right? The motivation behind doing a project like this is to get all your resources in one place so you can be more efficient, which means potentially smaller class size, right? Because the schedule is more balanced. Instead of having your students and teachers in 3 different places for ninth grade, they're all in one location. So you can be more efficient, reduce class size, reduce the number of sections that folks need to teach. It allows us to streamline and be more efficient. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can tell you that at no point, and I will swear on anything you want me to, that at no point have we had discussions about something devious that this would allow us to reduce staff.
Besides, when you hear like we could close a middle school, I think you're like, oh, that's a whole building of staff. Where do they go?
It's not fewer kids
we
being
have the
educated.
same amount of kids.
Yes. It's just where they're being educated as opposed to how many kids and how many staff.
Gotcha. So it's important, I think, as we have our last couple minutes here, to talk about what we're looking for from our staff and our community and our engagement as we begin, as we go through this process over the next couple months and head into next year. So what are you asking staff for? What is the big ask of what you want them to be doing?
Right. So, and Steve mentioned here about the design and hopefully a contract And at that point, that's when we really start to engage the staff, and we really start to get their feedback and what they would like to see, how they would like to see this renovation take place, and the potential for an addition. Right? We hear from a lot of the experts, and we've had meeting after meeting after meeting about all aspects of this project. And they really talk about how your staff is your number one asset in terms of educating the public. I can talk till I'm blue in the face, and quite frankly, I'm sure you're all sick of hearing from me about this. Right? Every opportunity I get, I talk about it. But we also have over 2,000 employees who we want to be informed about the potential here and what could happen. So we really want staff to get involved, to provide feedback, to ask questions, to email us. They can come straight to me, and if it's not something that I can answer or something that I should delegate, I can send your emails wherever. We have forms on this reimagined website that you have created with your department and Ms. Lebrowski. There's a place to FAQs, there's a place to request tours, but we want the staff to be informed. No rumors. Let's talk about it. Ask the questions. We don't have all the answers yet, but I think it's important that we engage in the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's important too for our staff, where if you get a question from your neighbor, and I think that's where a lot of us get our information in the community, you talk to a neighbor, like they work there, so they know. If you get a question you don't know, even if the neighbor's not forwarding the question, forward it to us, because we have this huge list of FAQs on our website that you can go and read through, and that may trigger another thought, like, oh, there's a thing I hadn't thought about. How can we make sure we include that in our discussion as we move forward? So I would say the same thing. Go to the site. Everything we have done to date is on that site. And if you want some fun, we have some stuff from the 90s. And this is a whole other discussion, but I'll quickly hit it because it's another FAQ that comes up. Why not just build a second high school?
I love that.
And if you look back at the 90s, we have the discussion on the second high school back in 95 that we didn't do. But why not just build a second high school at North Penn? Let's just do that.
Have North Penn and South Penn,
let's just
for
do
example.
It. How do we do it?
Well, first of all, for a school the size that we would need, you're talking about roughly 60 acres. I would love to know where there are 60 acres available that are zoned properly for us to add another high school. So the acquisition of 60 acres and building, oh, and by the way,
still needs to be renovated.
This building still needs to be renovated. So the cost is just absolutely cost prohibitive. It's not possible. We've also had the question, kind of dovetail with that, Bob, is why not build another high school on this campus and then tear down the old one? And the answer to that is our campus is so compact right now that it wouldn't allow us to do the land development and all the structures that would need to exist for us to build another high school without completely destroying our extracurricular activities, right? We would have years of no sports outside, no clubs outside. The disruption on campus would be massive. So really not an option either. Upper Marion, you mentioned them earlier, they actually built their new high school next to their old high school and then tore down or demolished the old high school. This campus will not allow that. So it's really about renovation and addition, potentially, or basic renovation, right? There's no option for a second building.
Got it, great. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here this morning?
Well, I'd like to encourage our staff just to get as much information as you can, because when we do get to that referendum question, if you're a staff member that lives in North Penn School District, you will have an opportunity to vote. So we encourage you to get as much information as you can and get out and vote, and hopefully you'll support the project.
Yeah, my only final thoughts here would be to think about kind of where we are in this. This is a major, major decision for our community. It's a once in a lifetime, that is not an exaggeration, a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to reconfigure the grade structure and the organization of the North Penn School District. We're all really proud of this school district and the accomplishments of our students and staff. And this is a major decision. And I'm really excited that it's going to a referendum and allowing our community to vote. So please engage with us. Please ask questions. We can come, one or all of us can come to faculty meetings. We've gone to home and school meetings. We want people to understand and be informed voters on this issue. I'm respectful of anyone's opinion on the matter. I just want people to be informed when they generate that opinion.
Sure. That sounds great. So the link will be with this video. We'll send it out again tomorrow morning after you guys watch this. We hope there's some discussion with all of you in your departments, in your buildings, and you generate discussion with each other. And we hope we see a ton of FAQs, questions coming in on the frequently asked questions. So if there are others, please add it to that so we can address that. Other than that, we're going to say have a great morning, North Penn. We hope this has been informative for you, and have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.